Religious nationalisms create problems, as we all know today, since by definition they are neither secular nor democratic. Initially, India was projected as a democratic state, but was always having to contest the communal ideology which so slowly gained ground. The fallout of partition and subsequent communal politics was substantial. Nehru succeeded in making adult franchise universal. This was an achievement in defining citizenship. But the effort to democratize the civil code did not succeed. In the period after establishing the Constitution, we should have been focusing on the granting of citizenship rights. That's where our focus should have been. But we got trapped into the politics of communalism. And that is really a huge division that takes place that we haven't come to terms with. This was a major assault on democracy in India, since a dominant social inequality and the power of religious identity lay at the root of communalism. Pivotal to democracy is citizenship and the rights that go with it. These are far-reaching, but they bring democracy closer if they can be achieved. Every Indian is a citizen and a free citizen of equal status. It's very important to add that. Citizens should have rights to food, water, and shelter provided by the state. I'm speaking ideally of a society that we wanted to happen. Then come the rights to education and health care. And crucially important are the rights to social justice, equality, and the freedom of speech. To implement these rights are the government agencies through which the rights become functional, namely the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive. In other words, the courts of law, parliament and the assemblies, and administration. It is only when this entire system functions satisfactorily that we can hope to see democracy working. And the interface of each of these facets from all these different institutions, one with the other, has to be a substantial reality. This is a very basic evaluation of democracy. Most countries do not have a full score, but some have a fairly decent score. We have some elements of this at some levels of society, but for the Indian majority, I'm speaking of the 50% plus of Indians below the poverty line, India is not a fully working democracy. We have a long way to go. The security of the minimum of food, water, and shelter remains a complete dream for half the population. Even those that have these basics cannot be certain of having the freedom of self-expression, which is also an aspect of free citizenship. We are still hunting for a viable opposition to clinch the existence of a democracy. We don't have one yet. We don't have to go back to ancient Greece and ancient India and claim that we had democracies 2,000 years ago. This is anyway wishful thinking, because we didn't have democracies then. It's a lovely dream and fantasy that academics and politicians think up about how In ancient times there was complete freedom and there was democracy. Rubbish. Besides, what we need are democracies that suit our present-day societies. We don't go back to ancient India and ancient Greece. We stay with the present today and say, what is it that we want from a democratic India today? Every time we act in anti-democratic ways, it is the politics of social justice that suffer the maximum. I don't intend to go through the working of each of these aspects of democracy, freedom, social justice, but I will merely pick out a few strands that I think are crucial examples, which we go on quoting day after day, but about which nothing much seems to happen. The British imposed laws on us as a colony. As a democracy, we should have discarded these laws that curtailed our freedoms and gone in for laws that were completely different. But we didn't. The British laws remain. In colonial times, to question the actions of colonial authority was regarded as seditious. It continues to be so. It is the same with incarceration. A person can be arrested and put into jail and remain there without trial for any number of years, irrespective of what the accusation may be. 16 respectable professional people were arrested and jailed in the Bhima Koregaon case. One died. Some are now out on bail, a few, and the rest remain incarcerated. There has been no proper trial to justify these arrests, and one's really concerned about this because of the recent incident that happened where another person who was accused of being a Maoist and was jailed, after 10 long years, he was acquitted and released. So the trial is very, very important. One doesn't really know what the result of the trial may be. He died soon after because of ailments that were not given attention to when he was under arrest. Others still languish, awaiting a trial. One may well ask, is this how democracy functions? If we describe ourselves as a democracy, these are not the activities that we should be indulging in. Providing a shelter is nobody's concern. This is only too well known by those who live on lands that are constantly submerged. Whenever the height of the Narmada Dam is raised, the land is submerged, people have to vacate the land and move to a higher elevation. Knowing that this will happen every few years, is there no way of locating elevated land that is such that it could be land where potential evacuees can safely settle? Surely it is possible to find such lands. Slum dwelling, for example, which we have all objected to in various ways, is now a recognized part of urban expansion. Every city that expands laterally also acquires slums. Again, had we really paid attention to that? To organize healthcare may be beyond the competence of most governments, but some minimum facilities can surely be provided. And then I come to education, which I have been writing about all my life. It should be a focus of democratic functioning. It's a much sadder story. It has among the lowest of budgets, and those who are competent to organize it purposefully in a proper way are generally the ones who are kept away from education. The people that move in to organize it are people who don't very often really know what we actually want from being educated. Education, which should be an adventure in the search for knowledge, is fast becoming a system by which knowledge is bypassed and kept away from those that most need it. When it comes to freedom of speech, the assertion of this freedom is problematic. One begins to turn to George Orwell's double-speak when searching for a way out. When the homes of scholars are raided and searched, and books are found there written by Marx, Mao, and Gramsci, the owner is not regarded as someone who is a widely read intellectual, but instead he is immediately denounced as a terrorist. State terrorism is often the function of the uneducated. We all know that a society which calls itself civilized has to practice ethical behavior. Did we once practice it? I don't know. Why was the Buddha always saying we need more ethics? And the Buddha goes on speaking about the need for dharma and karuna, ethics and compassion. And when somebody gets up and shouts, we need more of this, it means that there is a lack of this. And it is something that we should give very careful attention to. But these concerns about ethics and compassion and human concerns seem to be disappearing from our public speaking. There are only a few left that refer to these. Bringing them back will be a substantial effort. I don't intend to go through what is expected of democratic functioning. We all know that. We all know what is absent. We all know what is lacking. But as thoughtful human beings, can we make our society turn towards doing what will make us a fulfilled society and turn us away from the present impoverished form? Perhaps we should return to what we wanted when we first became a nation state. I'm now going back to 1940s, 1947. We should reiterate as clearly as possible what we want from our nation and insist that the state should function as fundamentally democratic. We have to go back to these beginnings again and go on insisting that that is what is important, that is what we really want and have wanted. If we acknowledge that the citizen is the pivot, then how do we ensure that the rights of the citizen are treated as foundational to our society? That seems to me to be a significant question. You may or may not agree. We need to remind ourselves, I think, of what we were striving for at that point when colonial rule ended. And in reiterating those ambitions even more strongly than before, we could attempt to build a truly democratic nation. And let me say in conclusion that perhaps we should start by rereading the writings of our earlier intellectuals such as Govind Pillai.